To say simply what Akashic records are, it's like an infinite web of energy structures that is like a library where all information is stored, and so you can tap into it and you can learn skills within it as well.
Welcome to this new episode, and today I am here with Mikolaj. How are you?
I am very good, thank you. And how are you?
Very good indeed. I just had a session from Mikolaj. It was very interesting because indeed Mikolaj is a mystic, and we're going to talk about mysticism as well as energy work, energy healing, or energy yoga. Very good. First of all, I'd like to ask you, what is your story in life?
I went into spirituality at the age of 11, 12 already, mainly because of suffering. I had a lot of traumatic experiences and there was a lot of disease in my family. And I was born with many different illnesses. I had really bad back and I had allergies to many different forms of foods, as well as different forms of illnesses that are apparently incurable. And that made me really question as to why is all of this suffering, and I decided that I didn't want other people to experience the suffering. And as a little child that doesn't know limitations, I decided I don't know anything, but I read that enlightened people know everything, so I'll just become enlightened. And that's how my journey began with alchemy. I started to pursue alchemy because they're madly driven by the wanting or the drive to know the truth. And I was really inspired by that because I thought I knew what truth was, but then, so why they're seeking truth? And that really made me question everything, along with studies of philosophy where the philosophers, they question everything. They question how we breathe, they question how we walk, and all of that. And they also seek the truth. And so my quest began very early, mainly because of the suffering, but then it turned into like a self-discovery and self-exploration type of thing, where I wanted to know what does it even mean to be human. I went in as far as questioning why does a human is.
Okay, so and that started very early. And how did you come across alchemy first and then philosophy?
Well, I had my first inspiration from my chemistry teacher, who was very fun and was very, very interesting guy. He was always standing out in the crowd. He was different from all the other teachers that I knew, because later out I found out that he practiced Hinduism. And it was my first exposure to a different religion, because I originally come from a Christian-only religion, country. But as a small child, I moved over to a different country, and at the age of 12, when I was starting to speak English, I found out that he was practicing something called Hinduism, which is a different religion, and that really opened something for me, where I was like, so there's more than one way to live life. Because in my culture, everything was the way it was, and I always questioned, especially my grandparents, is like, why do we go to church? Why do we do this? Why? If God is everywhere and is everything, why do we have to go to the guy and tell him our sins, for example? And they really didn't like these questions. And so, since they didn't have the answers, I thought that maybe other religions will. And so, he told me about it, and I started to search online. Basically, I am self-taught. The first 6 years of my life, I've been just reading tons and tons of books, listening to different lectures, seminars like Alan Watts, Carl Jung, Manly P. Hall, so on and so forth. They were all huge influence upon my growth and my understanding of the self.
That's fascinating indeed, from early age. I think what you say, that suffering prompts people to go and seek and learn about themselves. That's something I heard before, obviously. But then at an early age, really like delving into these kind of very complex and very adult-looking, subjects. I mean, that's quite remarkable indeed. So you think you had like a strong predisposition, maybe a genetic predisposition or a karmic predisposition for doing that, or how do you explain the fact that some other kids maybe are suffering and they sort of, maybe smoke weed or do something else, whilst you delve into the law and trying to learn about yourself and the knowledge of the world?
It's a very interesting question. To be honest, the way I see it, I think it was the suffering that I couldn't bear with, but it wasn't the suffering that I personally was experiencing. I was quite content with the suffering I was experiencing because I was comfortable in it. But eventually my suffering grew so much that I was causing harm to others, regardless of what my intentions were. Because in accordance with what I know, we give unto another that which we are, not that which we want to give. So if I am happy, I'm going to give you happiness. But if I am suffering, I'm going to give suffering unto you.
Mm-hmm. This sounds like the principle of resonance, which is one of the principles I learned in the yoga system. Indeed, it makes sense. Okay, so you moved from, I think, Poland, is that right?
Yes.
To the UK, and you learned and studied at many different teachers, mostly through books and online. And then when did you start actually giving sessions or practicing, or is there anything else that sort of formed you as a practitioner?
Yes, I started healing other people at the age of 16. I did my first Reiki course at the age of around 16 and a half. And I did Reiki 1 and Reiki 2. Very soon at the age of 18 I did Masters and Master Teacher. And Reiki was definitely one of those big elements that taught me the basics of healing. And I was always playing around. Because I was self-taught, I didn't really have many teachers. There was just one pair, because I was in Northern Ireland. And over there, spirituality is not as prevalent, I would say. And so I didn't have access. I was living in a small town. There was about 14,000 people living in it. And so I was just solo practicing all the time, experimenting on my body, mostly through trial and error, with the underlining on the error part. For example, I studied Tumo with the Himalayan monks in India. But I first tried it on my own when I was about 16, and I was able to change my body temperature as a result. But I did it in a wrong way, let's just say. And as a result, I over-stimulated or put too much stress on my heart, making it really difficult for me to function, because the heart rate was so stressed that it slowed down to the point where my pulse was below 40 when I was fully active. And that's usually a pulse that you get when people are either deep in sleep or in coma.
Yeah. And I mean, there are a couple of different modalities that you present to people. The one I experienced just now, it's of course an energy-based modality. I was lying down on a mattress, and you put your hands on my head first, but of course you guided me sort of into a state of relaxation, and then you put your hands on my head. And then it felt a little bit like Reiki in a way. I felt immediately an elongation of my body, particularly the head. I felt like my neck was particularly long. And then I had, I kind of lost control of the time, so I didn't really know how long we were in the session. And I had all sorts of thoughts coming through, but a couple of them were particularly, vivid. And one was me studying in my old nutrition school in London. We are talking about 2013, like about almost 10 years ago. And then, I came out of the session. And this is sort of one of the modalities that you practice. Can you tell us about, what kind of modalities you actually offer to people?
First and foremost, I do healing that is focused upon re-establishing balance within the body. So it could be through healing itself, as in healing the chakras, cleansing the chakras, balancing the energy bodies through the Akashic records. Because I use the term Akashic records because I myself am just a human, so I don't know that much, let's just say. There is the limited resources that I have due to number of books being written, due to time constraints, so on and so forth. But by learning how to tap into the Akashic records, you have access to the person's everything, basically. And the more experienced you become of accessing the Akashic records, the easier it is and the more fluent you become in moving through the different corridors of the Akashic records. To say simply what Akashic records are, it's like an infinite web of energy structures that is like a library where all information is stored, and so you can tap into it and you can learn skills within it as well. So if you don't know how to do something, you can tap into a skill from the Akashic record, and as long as you allow the energy to guide you, you're gonna perform it flawlessly.
And when you say tap into it, I mean, is it energy technique? Because if you think of a library, I think of books you open and read.
Yes, so it's like more like energy structure. So when you work with energy, for example in Reiki, what you're supposed to do is you connect with Reiki. And so when you connect, you're supposed to allow the flow to go through you. This is the differences between Western and Eastern Reiki. I studied both. And the Eastern tells you to allow the energy to guide you, whereas the Western give you a certain set. It's like you put your hands here, then you put them here, then you put them here, making sure everything is balanced. But in the advanced stages of Reiki, especially when you start learning the master level, is the energy is the one supposed to be moving the body, and you just allow the energy to flow, because energy is intelligent. And that's why we work with the higher energy, so it can guide us to do the healing for us.
It's like channeling or...
Exactly.
I understand what you're saying, yeah, and there's an element of intuition. And what is intuition? Like even art, when you're producing an object of art, I mean, your mind might be engaged in a way or another, but it's a higher force that comes through you and produces this output, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So you're saying maybe the Akashic record is this knowledge that you're able to channel from a higher level. Mm-hmm. And then comes through you and it comes naturally. So your mind is not so much involved with it, or there is
no, you're more like an observer that is allowing the flow to happen. And for me, it took many years to develop this skill. I've spent many years in different monasteries around the world, practicing the different religions to see what works, what doesn't work for me personally. And allowing the energy to guide me was a very long process for me, because of course I wanted to be the one in control, because I thought I know better than the universe how it should operate. And only through the lessons of humility and humbleness am I starting to see bits and pieces that when I let go of the control, I can start to see real miracles unfold before my eyes. But the moment I try to do it through myself, because it's me who has to do it, then it doesn't go that way.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I still feel in a altered state of consciousness as we speak. Mm-hmm. Just literally we finished the session 10-15 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. And it's very good. Yeah, and also there's a second type of modality, or at least you present your work through 4 different sessions that help people go through like the lower chakras, is that right? Or can you explain?
Yes. Basically what we do is we go through a transformation process where I work with the person upon who they wish to become, or what type of life they would like to have. And then we go through 4 different sessions. First session is the person comes in, we speak about what it is that the person wants to work with, or what they want to let go of, or whatever. And then we do second session where I go in, I energize all the energy bodies, all the chakras, so that we can make the transition in the third session. And on the third session, then we clear away everything that may be still lingering. And on the fourth session, we just close off, making sure all the loose ends are tied up. And it's a natural process where the person doesn't do anything The only thing that the person has to do is allow themselves to be themselves. So whatever true desires, wants come through, you allow yourself to do them, because you gotta recognize that you are enough as you are.
Very contrary to like more Western philosophy of achievements and changing and developing and moving all the time.
You will do all these things naturally, but not from the space of being in control, but of the space of just being the observer. It's like the Tao, you know, the way of effortless being. You allow yourself to be, and from the being itself, movement arises, not because you want it to arise, but because you're allowing it to arise. And so then you do everything perfectly, because you're already perfect, and you have a path that you know what it is, and God knows what it is. We can talk about God in a moment, but it's a broad term. And so you know that you and God are one. This is the basis of my teachings, all is one. And so you and God are co-creating reality, where God knows what it is that you want, and so He gives it to you, and all you gotta do is allow yourself to be yourself without judgments. And then, of course, you're always gonna receive it.
You know, when I was younger, I always had the feeling that I wasn't the main agent and actor in my own life. I was acting towards a goal or doing a task, with lots of intention and in the first person. And then a couple of years ago, I started imagining life as something that comes to me. Like I am indeed the main actor in my life, but I'm not the producer or the director of the movie, Mm-hmm. And it's a very different way of feeling, actually, because that means giving up a lot of control, if you want. And it's something that I'm still trying to embody and integrate, obviously. But yes, I mean, are we actually, do we have free will to a certain extent? Is it us deciding what to do? Or things come to us as they should be coming in a determined way, and we just go through life as it comes, because that's the only way we can do? I mean, it's a big question, I suppose.
It is, but I like these kinds of questions. The first thing I would say is you have absolute free will, meaning your free will is absolute and nothing can stand in the way of the free will. And coming from that, then we can go into more detailed explanation where we say that we want something, but in fact we just want to play a game with ourselves. And then we start rejecting ourselves, saying that we're not enough to live the life that we want. And so what we're saying is, a want comes through and say, I want to drink water. And I tell myself, no, I can't drink water. There is someone speaking, I can't take a break now. And so you're saying to yourself, it is not okay to be me right now. Maybe later it will be okay to be me, but right now it's not okay to be me. And so you're playing a game with yourself that you want a certain life, but you're not going to do the things to get that perfect life, because it's not okay for you to be yourself. And as long as you play the game that you're not okay, then always you're going to be wanting a certain different realities, certain different lives, because you're not allowing yourself to be yourself. And when you allow yourself to be yourself, you're always going to be living exactly the life that you want. It's not possible not to live your life that you want if you allow yourself to be yourself. Because your entire character, your entire skill set, everything is designed so that you live you. So the needs, wants, and desires come up as a byproduct of you consciously focusing upon different areas of life that you wish to explore.
It is interesting how you say that the conscious informs the subconscious. I am still in between these concepts. I have the feeling that my subconscious is a lot more powerful than my conscious self. That decisions are formed in the subconscious. That really knows what's potentially is right and wrong, and then my conscious self kind of like rationalizes the decision afterwards. But let's what I'm trying to think at the moment. But let's go into the concept of God,
okay?
Because this is why it's a huge concept, right? What is your interpretation of view of God?
The simplest answer I can give, that is the closest to truth, that I can use using my words, using the words, is all is one. And anything I said beyond that, we're moving away from it. Just keep that in mind. And so God is absolutely everything, and everything is contained within God. And the entire reality within which we perceive ourselves in is just God exploring himself within himself. And through that, then, God is, you can break it down into several components. Because depending on where you stand on the games of separation, is you are either going to perceive God as personalized God, that you can directly communicate with until you realize it on the level of the throat chakra awareness, or as an infinite God, known also as absolute within the mystic community. The absolute, the infinite, the all-encompassing, beyond any and all comprehension. And so the way I teach personally is within the first 3 chakras is what I call the human chakras, where you explore and experience what it means to be human and how to interact as a human with the world. So it's you and the world. Then on the level of the heart, you start to experience the interconnected nature of reality, where the human and divine meet. And so you're able to recognize and realize that there is more than just the physicality that surrounds us. Actually recognize it and see it. And then what happens is, as you work with the divine, that's the path of the mystic, is you want to unify with the divinity. And as you unify with God, the personalized God that you work with, you find yourself on the throat level chakra, and you recognize that you are God. You are the creator creating this reality. And the human you is the vehicle through which you're experiencing this reality. Mm-hmm. And so we can go beyond that into eventually reaching the full enlightenment. But basically, once you reach the state of the throat, you are aware that you are God. You are the creator, and everything is absolutely going the way you will it to. So on the level of the throat, there is no wants, needs, desires, because God only wills things. It's a word of play, the play of words in a way, but basically willing something into existence is completely different than wanting something.
And I mean, you personally, what kind of practice do you do on a daily basis or weekly basis when you're on your own? I mean, do you like meditation? What style?
I do energy yoga. This is what I would call it, is you surrender yourself to the divine. So you allow the divine to flow through you, and that's how energy work arises. You allow the divinity to flow through you until you give up your own individualized will as the human perception of self to the will of the divine. And that's how the process occurs, where you merge with the divine. That's what unity is. You merge your will with the will of God, and the two wills become one will. And then there is no separation between you and the God you. Mm-hmm. Paradoxically, you live a very, very fulfilled life, even though from the outside it seems like you live very simply. But there is infinite bliss to be found in washing the dishes.
Mm-hmm, for sure, karma yoga. But tell me, so it's just a form of meditation, basically. You sit down, you close your eyes.
You allow the energy to move you.
Yeah. So you just connect with this energy, and then it sits in the body in different parts, it moves. So you don't manipulate the energy, you just let it come to you, yes, and experience it as it comes.
And the movement arises from within. That's one of the practices. Depending on which chakra you're working on, there'll be different practices that would naturally arise. And so right now I'm working more on the levels of the throat. And this is why I teach the level of the throat stuff to a lot of people. And it comes with the practices of the voice. So a lot of voice comes through as I do this energy work, and the voice range is seemingly, at least to me, infinite, where it goes very, very, very deep into very guttural, heavy sounds. And it can go very, very, very high up, to the point where you don't even know that you could produce such high-pitched sounds.
And I mean, have you been training your voice in the past, or something new that you're doing now?
It's new, completely new. It just arose within the last year. I have no experience with working with the voice at all.
It's interesting because my throat chakra was not really a chakra I could really connect to a couple of years ago, and now is one of the most open for me. And when I do my type of meditation, sometimes it's transcendental meditation with the mantra, sometimes it's a vipassana, focusing on the belly, and very often I do have this energy coming through the throat, you know, and so I can relate to what you're saying. And yeah, it's very satisfying, I mean, to be in meditation and to be connecting with your higher self or God, as you mentioned, for sure. Okay, I'd like now to ask you about Kopangan. I mean, there are many places you can go and live in. Why Kopangan, and what are your plans here?
Kopangan, simply because I love the energy in Kopangan. I love the turnover of people. There's something constantly new happening. There are new events, new people, and so it's like you have your constant, a certain base of people that is here all the time, certain cafes that are here all the time, but then there are new ones, new restaurants, new cafes, opening, closing, and you have new people coming in, coming out, coming in, coming out, and I really enjoy that personally, because not only does it allow me to explore a lot of different ideas. I give lectures in different places. I used to give lectures in Orion for a few months. Starting from the new year, I'm going to be doing lectures once again. But with such a huge influx of people, I can do many different styles of lectures aimed at different types of people. Because you're going to have constantly new people coming in, and so you have all the different types of nationalities, ethnics, backgrounds, religions, and so on and so forth. And so you can host many different types of lectures talking about the same thing just from a different point of view, because all is one. And so whether I talk it from the aspects of alchemy or energy or psychology, for me it's one and the same. But people who like to categorize, they would see it as differently. So right now I have 3 main courses that I teach: is You Are Divine, Manifestation Mastery, and the Road of Affirmations within Christian mysticism.
Okay. Well, all you say sounds very interesting, so it's a pleasure to have you here on the island, and I'm sure I'll see more of you. But for today, thank you very much for the session that you gave me, and also for this interview. Kapun kap.
Kapun kap.